Hello guys, welcome to lesson 25 where we are going to continue to look at removing unnecessary words. And these are the three baddies that we're going to eliminate from our writing as of today. Said, so-called, and hereinafter. These are mainly found in the legal writing context, but are also found in the academic writing context and in the business English writing context as well. Wherever you find these words, please do not use them anymore. Let me explain why. In the last lesson, I said that we use these unnecessary words because we are influenced by our environment. With these words in particular, the reason why people use them is a lot more personal. That is to say, people use these words to project a certain image, or to project a certain status, which is why they're more often found in the legal world, because lawyers see these words and they think, haha, these are lawyerly words, and I'm going to use these lawyerly words. And they fall into the trap of thinking that this sophistication or sophisticated language is what the client is paying for. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could actually be the opposite of what it is that you're trying to achieve here. So you think that you're adding these words which are important and therefore you are important because you're using these words. Quite the opposite is true, is that it has the opposite effect on the reader. The reader sees these words and doesn't want to engage with these words, doesn't want to read these words, are confused by these words. There are some words that you see straight away and it already starts to have a negative effect on you. You start to see these words and you start thinking, oh no, I'm not going to get this. And then straight away, your whole approach to the text changes. Once again, shown by studies, anecdotally proven many times over, still happens to me when I read legal texts, that I read them and I just go, oh no, I don't want to read it, but I know I've got to read it. The good news is now I'm seeing this less and less in the work that I have to work with, but nevertheless, if you pick up textbooks or legal books or any kind of legal commentaries or doctrine, anything like this, then you're going to see these words. Even if you go onto LinkedIn and you have a look at some of the newsletters or alerts which law firms very often make available on LinkedIn, you'll see that these words are used and they have the opposite effect, particularly when you take into account why these tax alerts and why these communications are being offered free of charge in order to attract the public to work with that law firm. These words have the opposite effect. So said means a number of different things potentially. It could mean the, that, these, those. Be precise. Be precise. Legal writing, business writing is all about clarity. If you're writing in those contexts and you introduce ambiguity, you are not making yourself look good and you're certainly not helping the reader to understand the text. So-called has a number of different meanings. It could suggest that something is unusual. It could mean that something is commonly known as, or it could even mean that something is not suitable or correct. So-called leader. It has that kind of effect, and then it depends on how the reader reads the text. Hereinafter. Now, I've talked about legalese, I think, in videos 5 and 6 on my course right at the beginning, and I had a pretty detailed analysis of why legalese should always be avoided. And in this case, just like the last lesson with those words where we can simply cross them out, this is what we can do with hereinafter. It means afterwards in this document. It's not precise. It really isn't. People think that these legalese words are precise. No, they're not. The court cases have shown that many times. In short, we don't need to use these words. Let's have a look at some examples. The said project. In this case, we're saying literally the project, which is a clear grammar mistake because we wouldn't write the project. But yet people do this. In fact, even today I was proofreading and I saw this exact example. There we go. Simply say the project about this, the project regarding this, the project for this. We don't need to say the said project, the so-called tax. Just say the tax, or identify the tax, the VAT tax. We don't need to say so-called. It doesn't add anything to the understanding of the writing. And remember, that's why we are writing in the first place, for the reader to understand. Hereinafter known as company. Simply company. You don't have to trust me with this one. Have a look at all of the style guides on the internet. Every single one says, don't write hereinafter known as. So why do lawyers continue to do so? So let's go through the teaching tips for this video. It's easy to think that we need to use certain words, particularly within a legal context or a business context. We don't. We have to think about how are we communicating the message, and are we using the words we need to use to communicate that message? And that very often comes down to structure rather than vocabulary. Go back and have a look at the videos from the beginning of this course if you want to find out more about that. But I understand reducing a message by removing unnecessary words is difficult. It does feel at the beginning a little bit unnatural, a little bit alien, but you just have to trust the process. Trust the fact that you're breaking bad habits, and trust the fact that you are improving communication. And that to do so, there are some easy wins. And these are easy wins. Don't use said, don't use so-called, don't use hereinafter. Simple as that. Those are easy wins, as well as the easy wins from the lesson 24, that you immediately start to improve your text. Now, I hear this a lot, and perhaps I should have said this in lesson 24 as well. In fact, I think I could probably say this in every single lesson. I hear the excuse, other people do it. It's not an excuse. If other people want to make a dog's dinner of their writing, let them. Stand out above the crowd. You make your writing better. Don't do what other people are doing if they are making mistakes, which just seems madness when you think about it logically or objectively. If someone is doing something wrong, why would you want to do that same thing? It doesn't make any sense. And to go over some basics, the end result is that your text is easier to read. And now I went over this in a bit more detail in lesson 24, but essentially we've got to think about the reader and whether the reader can understand what we're trying to say, which means we have to think of the reader, not yourself as a writer, and that in order to do so, we have to learn these new, better habits and get rid of the bad habits. Okay, time for questions. What I'd like you to do now is simply have a look at the sentences below, download the PDF if you need to, and have a look at those sentences and remove the unnecessary text. And as you're doing it, ask yourself, really question the text and say, by removing this text, am I making a difference in the meaning once I've done what I've had to do? Ask yourself. It's a reasonable question. This is what I do with my online students and with my face-to-face students as well. I ask them, okay, don't just believe me, ask yourself, is there any change? And that is part of the process of learning a new habit. It's part of this process of understanding and accepting that the old way is a bad habit and the new way is part of developing a new habit. And as we know, dropping bad habits is hard. Building new habits is also hard and long. So let's have a look at this example. Please use this loan to buy the said car. Please use this loan to buy the car. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.